On today's show, we're going to unpack the impacts of presidential elections and recessions on the markets, and more importantly, your investments. If we haven't met before, my name is Mike Potter, certified financial planner and owner of True Wealth Financial. I believe that retirement should be prosperous, enjoyable, and purposeful. But a lot of people struggle with navigating the path into retirement because, frankly, it's complicated, confusing, and challenging, and it's all new to you. On this show, we help Christians create and optimize a retirement plan so that they can retire with confidence. Thanks for taking a moment to tune in. Today, I want to unpack a little bit about investing, specifically how the markets perform under or after presidential elections and recessions. Now, the reality is I've been talking to my personal clients about the impacts of the noise that's going to start taking place, the rhetoric, if you will, given that it's a presidential election year, since about January. But I feel like after last week's debate, it's kind of beginning to hit an all-time high. And so I wanted to do this video, not just for clients, but also for you as well. So let's first start talking about recessions first. In the debate, maybe you heard it, maybe you didn't, but Vice President Harris said that if Donald Trump was to be elected, that there would be a recession in the next 18 months after his election. Now, I don't know exactly why she said that or how she might know it's 18 months, but here's what I do know about recessions. Recessions are kind of like hurricanes in Florida. So if you ever lived in Florida or the Gulf Coast, Mississippi, Alabama, Texas, you know that there's always hurricanes coming. There's two truths about a hurricane. Either A, you're in one now, one is hitting, or B, one is coming on the horizon. Now, you don't necessarily know when it's coming. It might come next week, next month, next year, 5 years from now. But you know that if you live along the coast of the Atlantic seaboard or the Gulf Coast, you know that there's a high probability in the next 5 to 10 years that a hurricane is coming. A recession is essentially the same way. You're either in one, so technically a recession is defined as 2 quarters that the GDP recedes or decreases. And so we haven't had even 1 quarter for any period of time here, so we're not going to be in a recession today at least. But we do know that one's coming because, like hurricanes, they're always coming. And just like hurricanes, we don't know when they're exactly going to come. We don't know how intense they're going to be or exactly who will get hit the hardest. But we do know that recession's coming. But the question is not whether or not a recession is coming, but what happens after the recession. And so this chart here illustrates the bear markets where the market goes down 20% and what highlights the after effects, what happens after them. And you can see dating all the way back to the 1930s with the Great Depression, and then the 50s and in the 60s, and certainly into the 80s and the 90s and the 2000s, so on and so forth. Every time after a recession comes, there's a big spike in the market. Again, very similar to hurricanes. So for any of you that live along the Gulf Coast, you know that when a hurricane comes in, it does a lot of damage in that area. And so immediately after the hurricane, a lot of times it looks like a war zone, just destroyed, leveled. No power, no food, houses destroyed. The whole area could just be completely obliterated, depending on how bad it is. But here's what happens. Soon thereafter, FEMA comes in, or the states come in, and aid comes in, and there's a rebuilding period. And that rebuild, along with the insurance money, essentially makes an economic boom in that area because now all the houses that were destroyed are being rebuilt, the roads are being rebuilt, the businesses are being rebuilt. And so there's tons of money flying into that area. And the economic value is that after the hurricane, it is a wealthier aspect than it was before. And the houses are new, and the buildings are new, and the infrastructure is new, and it's generally built, everything's built better than it was previously. And so while the hurricanes kind of stink, and while the recessions kind of stink, what comes after is generally a lot better. So the key in recessions is just to hold on, just to have a good strategy that you have in place. And it's kind of like a roller coaster. It goes up and it goes down. In those recessions, it could really twist and turn and kind of make you sick. But the key is to just hold on because there's an economic boom coming thereafter. So what a lot of people try to do when it comes to recessions is they try to time the market. And the problem with timing the market, as depicted on this chart here, is that you lose a lot of money because you don't know the best days. This example here, for almost 20 years, if you just missed the 10 best days in the market, you essentially have lost more than 50% of your returns. So the question is, if you're going to time the market when it comes to recessions or really anything else, how do you know if you're going to miss the best days? How do you know when to get out? How do you know when to get back in? I remember meeting with a client way back in 2015. We were in Omaha at the time, and he was sitting on $200,000 to $300,000 of cash. And I asked him, I said, why aren't you not investing? And he said, well, because I'm waiting for the market to go down. I said, well, what do you mean for it to go down? He goes, when it goes down 20%, I'm going to jump in. I'm a big Warren Buffett fan. I'm a value investor. I want to wait for the market to go down 20% from where it was. Well, here we are, September of 2024. And if that gentleman is still waiting for that, he's still waiting for that because it has not happened. And in fact, as you can see, he's missed out on all this growth that's taken place over the last almost 10 years. If you're finding this information helpful and valuable, please hit the like button. Helps me to know to do more shows like this, and it's a nice way for you to say thank you. So what about presidential elections? How much do presidential elections, and specifically the party maybe that gets in office, what's the impact there on the markets? So if you heard former President Trump during the debate, he said that we had the best market, the best economy ever in history, which maybe is true, maybe not. I don't know. Depends on how you measure it, I suppose. And, within 5 or 10, 15 minutes later, you heard Vice President Harris say that the reality is that President Biden and we have had the best stock market in history. And so how can both of those statements be true? And they are, by the way. And not only that, just about every president that was before that could also say that they too had the best market in history at that specific time. Because here's the truth. When President Trump left office, essentially, the market was higher than it was when he took office. And today, Vice President Harris can essentially say that whether she wins or loses here at the end of this year, the market probably will be higher than they took office 4 years ago. Because just about, as you can see here, every president since going back to 1926, regardless of party, the market just about has been up after their tenure. Because here's the truth that you have to understand is that markets always go up. Now, there's times where they go down on the short term, but on the long run, markets always go up. Well, why is that? See, the stock market's comprised, in this example here specifically, is the S&P 500, which is the largest 500 companies in North America. Essentially, those companies are striving every day to make a profit. So every day, the leadership in that organization is going about making decisions to make a profit, and there are hundreds of millions of Americans going to work every day to make money for these businesses. So these businesses go up over the course of time. And we, the owners of them, essentially, if you're an investor, you have shares of these companies, you own a part of these companies, you are the benefactor of that increase. So I liken the businesses kind of like to a farm. So again, years ago, I used to live out in the Midwest in Omaha. And here's the reality about a farm. Every spring, that farmer would come out and he or she would plant seed. They would water it all summer. They'd keep the bugs off of it. And then every year they would go out and gain a harvest. Well, the ground would yield the harvest. Every year you put seed in the ground, the yield will come up. The harvest will come up. Next year, put seed in the ground, the harvest will come up. The farm doesn't get to the point where it says, okay, that's enough. I'm not going to yield anymore. As long as they fertilize it and take care of it and water it, that ground will yield a profit. Now, there's going to be some years where storms come through, excessive heat waves, droughts, maybe some bugs, some pests, things like that, where there's years where we don't get a good crop. But those are the minority, just like the recessions, those are the minorities over the majorities. The majorities is the yields come up. The same is true about businesses. Every year, generally speaking, a business makes a profit, except for the bad years when bad things occur, which is the minority, not the majority. So as a business is making money, the market is making money because the market is the sum of all the businesses. And so every year they're making a profit, and it continually becomes more and more valuable, and they continually go up. And the reality is that the president, essentially, or the Congress or the Senate, really don't have that much control over what the market does. They can make some policy changes. They can go into debt. They can spend money that somewhat has an effect on it, but it's a small effect. The economy is consumed of the average person, you and I, buying and selling things, making transactions, going to work, businesses making money, transactions occurring between businesses, paying taxes, getting refunds, the government spending money, all those things, all those transactions, those trillions and trillions of transactions is what drives the economy, not the guy or the gal sitting in the White House. So when they tout, hey, we've had the best market, that has nothing to do with them. That's in spite of them. That's because of all the billions of transactions that's taken place by average people throughout the year. So here's the truth. While they might take the credit for it, and while they are going to always say, if you elect this guy or that girl, the economy is going to crash, it's just not true. They don't have that much power, except to the point where you concede it to them. What I tell clients all the time, what I want to tell you today is the decisions that you make in your house have more of an impact and more of an effect on your finances than the person in the White House. If you just look at Mrs. Beautiful and I's record, essentially we went broke. We were deep in debt and went broke during the Bush II administrative term. We started getting out of debt, and we got out of debt during Obama's tenure in office. We continued to prosper during Trump's administration, and we became millionaires during Biden's administration. But how much of any of that did they cause? Well, they didn't really cause any of it. They didn't really give me any money. They didn't go to work for us. They didn't pay off any debt. The reality is that Mrs. Beautiful and I, from a lot of hard work and God's blessings upon us, that was what got anything done in our financial house. Because the truth is, what takes place in your house, the decisions you make in your house, have more of an impact on your financial life than those in the White House. So, as we know that recessions are coming, and as we know presidential elections are coming, I want you to do two things. I want you to kind of ignore the noise to the best you can, at least when it comes to making financial decisions. And I want you to just hold on and ride on through. Investing is like a roller coaster. Sometimes it's slow and steady. Sometimes it's fast and wild. And you don't know from one minute to the next what it's going to be. But I do know this. If you ride it all the way through, you don't get hurt. But if you jump off in the middle, you're going to get hurt. So when it comes to your retirement investing, you have to keep a long-term mindset. This is money for me when I retire in my 60s or 70s or 80s or 90s. So don't let today's headlines dictate the outcomes of decades from now. As we conclude today's show, if you're still with me and you found this information helpful, please hit the subscribe button so you can be notified of any future episodes. Today, we talked about the impacts of presidential elections and recessions on your investments. Now, your investing should be done in conjunction with a comprehensive retirement plan. If you don't have a retirement plan, a good first step might be to engage in a true wealth assessment. It's a financial checkup of sorts where you can determine if you're retirement ready. It'll help you unpack where you are holistically with your money, give you access to right capital, and a one-page plan of recommendations that you can go to improve your journey to retirement. If you already have a retirement plan, a good micro action might be to revisit your investments based upon any changes you've made this year due to the presidential election. Remember, what happens in your house with your investing is more important than what happens in the White House. Hopefully, this helps you on your path to a prosperous, enjoyable, and purposeful retirement. Hope you have a great day. Thanks again for taking the time to watch this week's episode of the True Wealth Financial Show. I encourage you to like, share, and subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. Additionally, you can find more information on our website at www.truewealth.show. One final note, though, as we wrap up to today's show. While I hope the information was helpful, valuable, and insightful, it's really for information and educational purposes only. Prior to making any decisions or taking any actions, I'd strongly encourage you to talk to your legal, tax, estate, or financial advisor who's familiar with the unique circumstances of your particular personal situation. Thanks again for watching, and until next time, hope you have a great day.